Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We're here at day 2 at the 6.5 Summit. And this next section, I'm going to be talking to Serge Lucio, VP and GM, Agile Operations Division at Broadcom. The overall theme for the show is navigating rough waters. And we're going to be talking about new ways of working and working with elements of value stream management. Serge, welcome to the 6.5 Summit.
Good to be here, Pat. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, as industry analysts, we're exposed to so many different things. And there's a lot of new types of technologies, new types of capabilities that companies like Broadcom is bringing to the table to essentially help out customers. For those who aren't familiar with the topic, value stream management, can you give us a brief introduction to what it is? I like to just call it VSM because I love acronyms.
Yeah. So if you step back, VSM really inherits from a lot of concepts and principles that have been around for a very long time, whether it's agile software development, lean manufacturing. It's really about a business process to optimize the flow of value. And probably the best way to speak about that is to try to contrast to how many large organizations are operating today and have been operating for decades. If you think about the line of business typically goes through an annual operating plan, will get funding budgets, and then oftentimes in these large organizations, there will be negotiation with IT. And so as you start to really plot the thread, there is a set of stakeholders living across different silos, which contribute ultimately to delivering value. And a lot of what we're trying to do with value stream management is really to identify all the forms of waste that do exist across this value stream and really change the way value gets created within these large enterprises. So the simpler way to think about it is if you think about these large organizations organized around functional silos, and if you visualize that around this hierarchical tree, a value stream oftentimes is going to be the a cross section across these different functional silos of individuals who are participating in generating this value. And so value stream management is really a set of processes and techniques to orchestrate the work that these different stakeholders are contributing to, again, deliver value.
Having run a couple multi-billion-dollar businesses in prior lives, this is spot on. These are tools I wish I had. Typically we would bring a bunch of management consultants in and make some recommendations. Here's what we cut. Here's what we change. Here is a value-based recommendations on what to do, but there were really no tools to be able to really manage this. So it was kind of a fire and forget. I love the sound of this, but realigning entire organizations is tough. Just given even looking at the handoffs, the things that happen to make change and create value. What are some of the hurdles that are challenging organizations to adopt VSM or value stream management?
Yeah, so you have to start with first, what is a value stream, right? Because at its core, it's all about understanding a flow of value and who are the stakeholders contributing to delivering that value. So oftentimes when we think about the journey of many of these large organizations, it really starts with what we call value stream mapping, which is really starting to plot essentially how value gets created and understanding what are the different interdependencies across different silos, individuals towards delivering that value. Now, once you start to plot these value stream maps, you're confronted with the reality that oftentimes these value streams, the as-is value streams, if you will, have a very large number of interdependencies. And so one of the biggest hurdles that we see is really at what level of granularity do you define these value streams?
Yeah.
Right? And you have these two approaches. With the bottom-up approach, which is I define these value streams as is, and I end up with value streams which are extremely coupled, which essentially ultimately still require to have kind of a global prioritization, and essentially that global prioritization is going to affect the ability to actually get the velocity that many of these organizations are seeking. On the other end, we see many organizations who are approaching it kind of top down. And oftentimes they will start with a line of business being kind of a value stream. But when you have line of businesses with thousands, tens of thousands at times of individuals contributing to that specific line of business, it's too coarse grained, right? There's no way to actually delegate down to actually get the kind of agility that organizations seek. So a lot of the work that we see is really on kind of right-sizing the value streams first. Then comes the second level of issue, which is a value stream really works when these teams are durable, right? So that really affects a lot of the funding models on how these organizations are being set up, who owns the budgets, how budgets get allocated, organizationally, right? Where do these resources sit? And of course, many organizations initially start with kind of a somewhat of a matrix environment where they still have the functional silos, and layer on top of that kind of a value stream maps, which are kind of matrix into the functional silos. But over time, what we see is that this really requires a pretty profound reorganization of these organizations. And essentially, it's like you're pivoting the organization really on the side, right? To really look at these value streams as kind of the key organizational construct, and not so much the functional silos.
Yeah, and also, as hopefully in the audience you would expect, there is no one way to attack this. And if I were going in and doing this, if I still worked at large companies, I would definitely want to go in and understand, where can we make, where should we approach this? Bottoms up sometimes work, side in sometimes work, and tops down sometimes work, typically based on the culture and the makeup of the business. If you have 30 subsidiaries, then you're going to attack it differently, let's say, than maybe having two businesses. So are there certain types of companies that you're seeing adopting value stream management? Meaning, are there certain verticals, are there certain sizes, or is it more about, hey, this is the situation we're in, we've identified VSM as a thing that can help us?
Yeah, so if you step back, the adoption of VSM is very much driven by digital transformation. Many of these organizations have been adopting, the cloud technologies that really enable them to develop software fast and faster. But at the end of the day, they recognize that one of the biggest impediments is no longer about the ability to deliver code, but really the ability to align the entire organization on the delivery of value. So in many ways, value stream management is a consequence of the desire of many of these organizations to embark on their digital transformation. So in reality, pretty much every large enterprise we interact with is in some way in the spectrum of their own transformation, with obviously B2C organizations being probably at the forefront of that transformation. So whether it is financial organization, insurance, retail, telcos, because of the B2C nature, because of their appetite to actually transform in the way they're engaging with their customers, have been really kind of leading the charge. But in many ways, everybody is kind of in this spectrum. And back to what we're describing, we really kind of see three classes of organizations. You have the class of organization who realize that this is absolutely strategic. And this is a C-level conversation. Oftentimes, these organizations have created specific roles, like a chief transformation officer, and staffed that specific transformation. And it's a very tops-down, deliberate transformation that typically is going to be multi-year, let's face it. On the other end, what we see, some organizations pretty much by necessity during COVID had to fundamentally change the way they operate and really quickly innovate and deliver digital services. And they are in this process of trying to figure out how do they scale it up to the entire organization. And so they are going essentially from what was a forced pilot or deliberate pilot to scaling. And then, let's face it, we still have many of our customers who are kind of pretending to be agile, pretending to adopt some of these principles, but really you can see that culturally, right, they have not really made that transition and recognized that they really need to change.
Yeah, it seems to me that history and complexity would play a huge role. I mean, if you're a 100-year-old company, a 50-year-old company, you are probably operating under some of the same processes that you did when you started up your company. When it was a lot smaller, it was probably domestic, it wasn't international, and things add up. And then companies take a pragmatic approach and say, let's not fix it if it isn't broken. And then they realize, well, gosh, we can't do all of these incredible business transformation things that we need to do. Gosh, what do we need to do? Right? Well, people realize at some point that they need some flavor of VSM, and it just makes perfect sense to me. And again, did not have these tools when I was running big multinational businesses. I wish I did. We talked a little bit about making sure that in your approach to VSM, you incorporate culture into that, but can't companies also use VSM to improve and change the company culture? Kind of the opposite end of looking at it when it's implemented?
I mean, the two really go together, right? Because at its core, when you think about VSM, and let's go back all the way to Agile software development and even the Agile Manifesto. Because in many ways, when the Agile Manifesto was created, it was really about what were the fundamental changes that really were required to change the way we would operate, right? From this waterfall model to an Agile model. And in some ways, when you read the Agile Manifesto, it's really about changing the culture from one which is fundamentally process-centric, fundamentally hierarchical, fundamentally based on functional KPIs, to one which is really about realigning the entire organization around this notion of value. Now, in order to do that, you have to build trust. You need to actually get these different cross-functional teams to trust one another. And really, what we see is that a lot of the work in that transformation is actually more about the change in how people get measured. And one of the key tools which has been pretty successful in driving that kind of transformation is objective and key results. If you look at Google in their early days, as they matured and started to become a large organization, became a big proponent of OKRs. And it was really about trying to continue to foster the kind of culture and ethos that Google had in the early days, but scale it up. And so what we see is that many of these larger organizations, as they are adopting value stream management as a practice, are layering things like objective and key results as a way to change kind of the way organizations are measuring individuals, teams, on how they're really operating on a daily basis. When we so I'll kind of draw a couple of parallels, right? When the Agile Manifesto says, things like working software over comprehensive documentation, in the VSM world, it's really, business value over KPIs, over my, mean time to repair, or my, uptime, or whatever other functional metric teams typically have been kind of measured on for the last, 10, 20 years. And so the two really go hand in hand. In many ways, when we talk to our customers, it's less about the tools. It's way more about that cultural transformation, and that has to come from the top.
Yeah, and the thing that I like about VSM changing company culture, it does it in a way that's a little bit less personal. I know business is about people, and people make up a business, but when you're debating the number or the metric or the value that it's bringing, either lowering your costs or adding value to your customers, it's a little bit less of an emotional discussion. And I feel like it, in a way, can create a platform to change the culture, maybe bring down some of the fiefdoms that just aren't benefiting the company. But in its core, understanding where value is created in itself can transform a company completely, and with it in the culture. So I know a company who offers VSM solutions called Broadcom. And you just
Yep.
happen to run that business. I would love to know what you think makes up a good VSM solution. What should customers be looking for?
So let's start. Let's go back to, I think, what is the key thing we need to achieve to transform the culture? And at its core, it's all about trust. It's all about trust across these different individuals who participate in this value stream. And the only way you can create trust is by first creating visibility. And visibility and psychological safety, which is a dimension of what the OKR is about. What I mean by that is, let's talk first about visibility. These different stakeholders, right, from the executive all the way to a developer, from an IT operations person all the way to a business analyst, speak different languages.
Yeah.
Right? And so one of the key things that a platform that supports VSM needs to offer is the ability to actually translate the information across different stakeholders, across different layers of the organization. So essentially, we need to be able to map and consolidate information and or decompose information in a very consistent way so that everybody across the organization knows what are the news. Are we delivering late? Are we over budget, under budget? And the psychological safety element of it is for a news to just be that, to just be news. Whether the news is bad or good, it's really just about enabling the organization to make changes, to adapt, to pivot. So the second aspect is really this notion of alignment, of really any kind of changes in plan is really an opportunity to realign the entire organization and to shift that investment, to shift those priorities. And so the ability, again, to be able to translate information up and down, left and right, is really what enables organizations to actually be able to make those alignments and the changes in plan with confidence. So these are kind of the two core capabilities. But the net benefit of it is not so, well, is obviously about kind of improving the flow of output, improving efficiency and effectiveness of investments. But if you just step back from the details, one of the biggest benefits that we see many of our large enterprise customers realize is really that most of the work, or a lot of the work that is being done, is not necessarily strategically aligned with the business value that needs to be achieved. And so with this kind of platform, really what you are also trying to layer on top of is analytics to help uncover essentially these different sources of waste, whether it's idle time or production. And so a lot of the capabilities that we have really start with visibility, enable people to do impact analysis, change plans, analyze the effect of a change in these plans, but ultimately uncover sources of waste. And probably the best quote from one of our customers is that, I think the quote was, "Your platform enables us to gain speed in the corners." And what this chief transformation officer really meant is that with our solutions, any kind of change in plan slows down the organization. With the right data and the ability to realign the organization quickly, in fact, a pivot enables to accelerate the value creation to customers.
Like two things came out for me. First of all was the news, right? Good, bad, it's just the news, right? Let's get around. The other was an alignment, because what I'm thinking is I really need flexibility as well. And by alignment, not only that first alignment, but businesses change, right? And every strategic long range plan, it seems like you might want to go into your VSM and make some changes based on business. I mean, I'd like to say that you can fire and forget on a system like that, but I think business moves way too quickly right now, as we're using new technology to build new technology, and technology is such a part of it. It's hard for me to identify any business that isn't surrounding itself by tech. So it's not just our imagination. Everything is speeding up, and the ability to go into VSM and make some nips and tucks based on realignment, I think is a very positive thing. So how would a customer, final question here, how would a customer get started? Where do they start on this organization if, they knock on your door, I need some help, Serge, like, how does it start?
It really depends on where they're at in that journey, right? Most of these organizations have already a set of tools, right? Especially when we talked about the operational value stream, which is essentially the flow to actually ultimately deliver innovation to the market. These organizations already have a set of tools. So oftentimes where we start is by understanding how the flow of value is being generated. Now, oftentimes they have a business value stream, which is way less defined. And so the way we approach it is typically through an initial workshop to understand funding models, to understand as this organization really start to do their transition from managing projects to embarking on managing products or digital services, they start to pivot from the language point of view. But oftentimes the first step is really about taking the data that exists at the delivery level, at the operational value stream, and actually bubbling that real time, providing real time visibility into what is happening at the delivery side to the business stakeholders. And that is one of the first steps that really enables to engage on the conversation on what really constitutes a value stream. How do we change a funding model from one that is project-centric to one where we fund teams and the funding is durable? And that is typically what we're doing over literally an initial workshop with these customers. And then we have many partners supporting us and these large organizations in these transformations, which again, at the scale of some of our largest customers, are multi-year kind of journeys.
Serge, we are coming up on time here. This is fascinating, and this absolutely fits perfectly. We're talking about new ways of working. We're talking about value stream management. Overall, in the theme of the 6.5 Summit, which is navigating rough waters. And you don't need VSM to navigate rough waters. You just might be wanting to optimize something that you want more out of in your value map. So this is Pat Moorhead with More Insights and Strategy. I want to thank you again, Serge, for coming on.
Thanks, Pat.
So hang around for awesome 6.5 Summit Day 2 videos. And you can also go back to Day 1 as well, as we are talking through all the way from chips to SaaS this week at the 6.5 Summit 2023. Thank you for your time. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are on the planet. Take care.